This is Craig Marker for Breaking Muscle. We're going to be talking about the overhead swing, sometimes called the American swing or the CrossFit swing, and why there might be some better alternatives for that. So first, let's talk about the overhead swing and what it is. So what we'll see, it's basically a kettlebell swing that ends up overhead. So we're going to explode with our hips and then pop it over our heads. So let me just do one or two of these. So Andrew Reed made a good video about these last year, and he talked about why the overhead swings might not be so good for you. I think of 3 reasons why they might not be so good. The first is when you're swinging things overhead, you tend to lose your shoulder position. So anytime I want to pick something up heavy, I'm going to pull my shoulders back and down. And that's a good solid upper back position, keeps the shoulder in a good position. If I'm doing that with a swing and keep my shoulders in that position all the way through the movement, but as soon as I hit about here, it starts to fall apart. Just the position where my hands are together. So the overhead swing leads us to be in a bad shoulder position. If I want to do something different, what I can do is a snatch. We're going to talk more about this in a second, but a snatch is a one-handed kettlebell swing that ends up overhead. This is a much more solid shoulder position. The other reason is that the kettlebell swing is really an explosive hip movement. So if I'm going to explode with the hips, I don't really need to bring my arms overhead. I can explode with the hips and the kettlebell can float to about here. There's no reason really to bring it overhead. So those are the main reasons. I guess there's a third reason. When we bring it overhead, we tend to use our arms too much. I see some people just making it a shoulder movement. It's not a shoulder movement, so we want to make it a hip movement. So let's talk about some alternatives to the overhead swing. The first alternative would be heavy swings. So I can get a heavier kettlebell. So this one is a 56 kilogram, 124 pound kettlebell, and I'll just do heavier style swings. That really builds my explosive hip power, and it allows me to do much more than doing something with a 24 kilogram where I have to bring it overhead. I'd never bring that overhead unless I'm going to do a pressing type movement. The other alternative are to do snatches. And a snatch is nice because it allows us to get in that shoulder position again, that good packed shoulder position. So many people are afraid of snatches, so there's some simple steps to do in teaching the snatch. The first is to have a good one-handed swing. So what we want to do with a one-handed swing, we want to make it look like our two-handed swing, but just with one hand. So we don't want to rotate the body or do anything like that. So the first step is to do some good one-handed swings. So we're going to keep our arm back in that packed position, and we're going to just pop with our hips. That's going to be the first part of our snatch. So we're going to get really good at those one-handed swings. From there, we're going to do one-handed swings with a pull at the top. So we're going to pop with the hips and kind of pull back at the end. A snatch is basically pulling the kettlebell up over our head. We're going to want it close to our body. We're not going to want to go out here and make a big arc, because what's going to happen, the kettlebell's going to flip up onto our forearm. So what we're going to do, just some one-handed swings with a little pull at the end. So one of the reasons people are afraid of doing snatches is that banging of the forearm. And let me demonstrate it with a much lighter kettlebell. So some reasons for this are, one, people do that big arch or the big arc of the kettlebell, and it tends to bang on the wrist that way. So the closer we bring it to the body, the less that happens. The other reason people are gripping the kettlebell too tight. So if you grip it tight here, it goes straight up and then has to plop down at the top. So So what we're going to do is practice a loose grip on the kettlebell, enough to hold on to it and not lose it. But then we're going to allow it to kind of pop into position. So in slow motion, a swing is basically, or a snatch is a swing. We're going to generate all the momentum from the hips. The arm is going to kind of guide it into place. So we're going to bring it close to the body and then pop up into it. So the important part is really it generates from the hips first. So again, in slow motion, it's a swing, and then our hand kind of guides it into place. So this is Craig Marker with Breaking Muscle. These are some alternatives to the overhead swing.